Big Brother, mainstream media, government cover-ups. You want answers? Well, so does he. He's Alex Jones on the GCN Radio Network. And now, live from Austin, Texas, Alex Jones.
Welcome to the Alex Jones Show on this Friday, the 6th of June, the 70th anniversary of D-Day, the day that began the end of the war in Europe, where so many people paid the ultimate sacrifice. We're going to be joined later in the show with Alex Jones, as well as with Anthony Gucciardi and Dr. Group. We're going to be talking about taking control of your individual health. And why should you do that? It's not just for your health benefits. There are many other things that are pulled in here, as we're reminded by some of the breaking news today, and a couple of stories on Infowars. The first one by Paul Joseph Watson. A new medical law is mandating private conversation with a child before every doctor visit. You need to take control of your health care because you don't want to be pulled into this metastasizing surveillance state. Another article out today on Infowars from John Rappaport. Obama says, Obamacare, watch out, here comes predictive modeling. They're going to be using all kinds of metadata about your medical history to infer things about your private life. You're going to be under a microscope if you have to participate in this government-run healthcare system. But this is very, very egregious. Not only can they get into your life, they can basically destroy your family if they're going to mandate this. And this lady who went there was told that there was no way for her to opt out of a private consultation with her 17-year-old daughter. She was told that that was a new law. She had no other options, but this is an amazing story. We're going to go into that. We also have a breaking story about a shooting in a Seattle Christian school. It was stopped by one brave person. Now, this guy did not have a gun. He had pepper spray, but he was able to stop the shooting. 3 people have been wounded there. 1 died. And so the question is, in my mind, I don't know the details of this. I don't know the timing of this. The question in my mind is, if he had had a gun and been on site, would he have had to wait until the gunman was reloading before he could have stopped this? Would he have had to wait for the gunman to get off so many shots before he could have stopped this? We always say the only way that you stop a bad man with a gun is with a good man with a gun, or a good man who waits until the guy has to reload. There are many people out there, as this young man would do, would lay down their lives to save other people. He's a hero. His name is John Mice, and he's reported to be a devout Christian. This is a Christian school, an excellent student. He took this guy on essentially unarmed and took him down. But we know that if people have concealed carry, if they have the ability to protect themselves, they will also protect others. We're also going to be covering, of course, D-Day. We're going to be talking about what it meant. And we're going to be talking about the hypocrisy of the Obama administration. Of course, he's there today in France with these ceremonies. And as they're praising the veterans who did this 70 years ago, many of them are dead, of course, but as he's praising them, we see everything that's happening with Bergdahl to the Veterans Administration. New information today about 18 people dying at a VA on a waiting list, about almost 2,000 who were told they were on a waiting list and they never were put on a waiting list. We also have some breaking news. Again, this is not only the 70th anniversary of D-Day today, but yesterday was the 1-year anniversary of the Snowden documents. We have even more verification, this time from one of the large cell phone carriers in the UK, Vodafone, talking about how the government there and governments all over the world, essentially, are setting up their own private rooms to tap into phone calls. And we always hear that it's just about metadata. And that would be bad enough if that were true. But they talk about the fact that they are grabbing phone conversations, text messaging, and Vodafone is tired of it. They don't like this situation. They're trying to get the public to be aware of where this is leading. And you know, where it's eventually leading is exactly what we're seeing with this new medical law in Michigan mandating that they come into your family's life. There is no privacy for us anymore. They're constantly coming after us. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight on this Friday, June 6, 2014. the 70th anniversary of D-Day, the beginning of the end of the war in Europe, and the amazing sacrifice that people paid as they jumped into just continuous gunfire is just amazing even today. And there are some veterans who are still alive. As a matter of fact, CNN had a story with a 93-year-old veteran. He was 23 when he parachuted onto the beach, and he parachuted onto the beach at 93. At 23, he was one of the older guys in his unit. Most of the guys that were there were teenagers. It was teenagers that were dying that day on Normandy. And he said, of course, it was much easier this time because nobody was shooting at him, even though he was 93. And he talked about heroes. You know, we still have heroes. There's a story that's coming out of the shooting yesterday in Seattle at the Seattle Pacific University, a Christian university. A fellow named John Mice. I believe if I'm spelling his name correctly, it's M-E-I-S. They said he had a habit of carrying pepper spray, and as the shooter at the university was shooting, he had wounded 3 people, one of whom subsequently died. The guy began reloading his shotgun, and this guy saw his opportunity, sprayed him with pepper spray, and he and other students jumped on him and subdued him and stopped the shooting. Of course, that's what we were always saying. Good people stop bad people from doing things. And as long as we have a society where there are good people who outnumber the bad people, people who will risk their lives just like this young student did, we are better off having our own firearms. The question I look at when I look at this is like, I wonder if he had had a firearm instead of pepper spray, if he had been able to come after this guy while the guy still had a loaded gun, because he had a loaded gun, if he could have taken him down from a distance, would it have saved that life? Would those 3 people have been shot? Would that one person have died? I don't know. I don't know the facts of the case. Of course, that was a question we asked about the Fort Hood shooting. Jakari and Kit Daniels asked the general that. They said, how long did it take to get? Oh, we were very happy with how long it took the police to get there. It only took them 10 minutes. Well, in that amount of time, a lot of people can get shot. And they disarm our soldiers. They want to disarm the public. But today, on the 70th anniversary of D-Day and the heroes that were there, we see that we still have heroes amongst our midst. And we're going to be talking later in the show about the hypocrisy of Obama being at Normandy, honoring these vets, at the same time that he is pushing and trying to start more conflict. Not only reviving the Cold War, but pushing it to a point where it could very well erupt into a third world war. And we're also going to talk a little bit about the what's behind that. We're going to talk about taking control of your individual health. We're going to have Anthony Gucciardi, Dr. Group, and Alex is going to join us in the third hour because there is an amazing story that is up on Infowars.com from Paul Joseph Watson about a new medical law that is mandating private conversations with children before every doctor visit. But before we get to that, I want to talk about another story that's up by Paul Joseph Watson. That's a sheriff calling Homeland Security on a journalist just because he requested public records. Now, yesterday we talked about the 1-year anniversary of the Snowden leaks, the beginning of the documents. I say leaks, the beginning of the revelation of these documents. He has been criticized as a spy. We've seen people like Newt Gingrich say he needs to be brought back as a spy, executed. Others have called for his imprisonment because he exposed criminal actions of the government. They don't want you to know anything about what they do. They think that they should have all knowledge, however, about everything that you do. Many people have said, well, I don't care if the government looks at everything that I do. Well, you better care because they're going to, in many cases, misconstrue what they learn about you through metadata, maybe even through your conversations. We talked about, when we were talking about Ed Snowden's anniversary, we talked about how a British couple who was coming to visit America talked about how they were going to dig up Marilyn Monroe, and they were stopped by the people at the airport. They were detained for, I think, 24 hours, eventually sent home without being allowed into America. The government authorities did not see the sarcasm in that. There are many ways that you could get in trouble with just a false positive, but why should we live our life as an open book to the authorities anyway? Why is it that everything that they do is secret? But everything that we do is open. At the Bilderberg meeting, one of the topics was, does privacy exist? Well, no, actually it doesn't, because those people are some of the key players making sure that it doesn't exist. When they went there, they brought paper documents with them. They met in a hotel that they had evacuated days before and scanned for any listening devices, any bugging devices. They understand the importance of privacy. That's why they want it, and they want to take it away from you. But look at how this has gone even one step farther. Not only are they going after a journalist, in this case in Tennessee, who was trying to get information about public records through a Freedom of Information request. He's trying to get information about what's going on at a prison. He believes that there is abuse going on at this prison. And so he requests the information. And what does he get? He gets harassment from the sheriff. Listen to this story.
The Marshall County Sheriff's Office apparently doesn't feel it has to comply with the law.
He's an editor for the Prison Legal News and has been working on a piece about complaints coming out of the jail. He's suing Sheriff Norman Dalton for refusing to release public records of alleged questionable practices in the prison system.
It included policies regarding medical care for inmates, the contract of the jail with phone companies to provide phone services for inmates, the grievance procedure and process used at the jail for inmates who raise complaints.
Not only did the Sheriff's Office deny those requests, Sheriff Dalton admitted on the witness stand to ordering background checks on Freedman, calling the Department of Homeland Security, and even going to Freedman's house.
Yeah, I think that's very alarming and very disturbing that a law enforcement officer can do a background check, and in this case actually drove in to check my residence in person, just because I'd filed a public records request with his agency.
All things Dalton's attorney said were done to protect the jail.
Well, like the sheriff said on the witness stand, if if he's not personally familiar with the person requesting or know that they're a resident, then okay. He has the right. He has an
I don't think the sheriff wants this guy for his lawyer. If you say that, he's not the most articulate guy. The amazing thing about that is that not only did the sheriff just refuse to comply with the Freedom of Information request, but then he pushes back to intimidate this journalist. He gave him, as he mentioned in the video that you just heard, gave him a home visit. He ordered background checks for him. He even called the Department of Homeland Security to get federal agents to harass him. We saw this with Wolfgang Halbig when he started asking for Freedom of Information requests about the Sandy Hook shooting. This is a guy who was a security expert. He's had seminars. He's consulted with many different organizations about how to make schools more secure. He's been to Columbine. He's been to all these places where they had shootings. And yet in Connecticut, in the last year, rules have changed. And so in Connecticut, when he starts asking them for Freedom of Information, what they did was they passed his information on to some Florida law enforcement who show up at his house not once but twice to harass him, to ask him if he owns a gun, that type of thing. Now, one of the things that I thought was interesting in this story by Paul Joseph Watson is that the sheriff's attorney said that that this journalist's attempt to obtain the records in person invalidated the request. Really? If you're going to ignore my requests, we're going to show up in person. We've done that multiple times. We asked the airport here in Austin to give us some information about what the TSA new program with some new equipment. They totally ignored what we requested. We had the same thing happen with the Asymmetric Warfare Center. And you know what? When you ignore requests, repeated requests, we're going to show up. And if you think that's suspicious, if you get in our face about it, you're going to be the story. Because you're the one with something to hide. You're the one that doesn't want to let the people that you work for know what's going on. And that tells us that you're doing something that you don't want seen. We don't have to have national security for everything that every government employee in this country does. That's not necessary. But everybody is acting as if they worked for the CIA. Everything is a state secret. We can't know anything about anything. But they need to know everything about us. So let's go to this next article here. This is in Michigan. And this is an article also from Paul Joseph Watson on Infowars today. A Michigan mother takes her 17-year-old daughter to the physicians for a minor foot injury, and she's told that there's a new state law. And so this is what she says. She says, the receptionist told me that it's a new law and there's no opting out of it, that her daughter is going to have a private consultation with somebody there. At which point she said, I asked if I needed to leave and go to an urgent care center because I was not going to submit my daughter to such a conversation. She said, well, that didn't go over very well. So the receptionist closes a window and immediately the office manager comes out and confronts her and says, may I speak with you? She said there's a new policy that would allow a child to access his or her medical records online, and the child would be allowed to block a parent from viewing the website. Well, to sum it up, basically what this woman said is she told them that she's not going to allow anybody to talk to her child privately. But as Paul points out, this is a long history that our government is not only prying into our family lives, but it's also prying into our children's lives. It's trying to take over control of our children as well as our own personal lives. And, of course, at the bottom of this is something where they go in and they talk to her about birth control, about sexually transmitted diseases, where maybe they push condoms on young men, whatever. The parents need to be a part of that conversation. We've seen in Massachusetts parents very angry about very explicit sexual education given to very young children in elementary schools. And there was a parent who pushed back against that. He said, I want to get my child out of that, or I need to be there. They said, you have no right to know what we're talking to your children about. We're going to talk to them about sex, and you have absolutely no right to know anything about that. He sued, and he lost. And you know what the court said? They said, when you turn your child over to the government school, you have abandoned your parental rights. We'll be right back.
So part of it is we have to break through our kind of private idea that kids belong to their parents or kids belong to their families and recognize that kids belong to whole communities. Once it's everybody's responsibility and not just the households, then we start making better investments.
That's right. Once it's everybody's responsibility, because the government is really the ones that they believe that they own your children. It used to be kind of obscure. It used to be just a few people were talking about that. But we just saw a commentator for CNN say, we need to get over this idea that you own your children. I'm sorry, MSNBC, that's right, MSNBC. And this is something that's been going on for quite a long time, even over the same issue as to who's going to talk to my child about sex. What are they going to tell them? When are they going to do it? At what age in their life? That's something that Michigan is now saying they're going to take charge of. You're not going to have any say-so. You don't have a way to opt out of this. Now, when people had complained about their elementary school children being exposed to very explicit sexual information at a very young age in elementary school, they took it to court. The court said, you have no rights. You have abandoned your child to the state once you bring them into the government school. That is a doctrine that has been called loco parentis in legal terms, in place of the parents. They see themselves as acting in place of the parents. But it actually is even broader than that. As we talked about the one-year anniversary of Ed Snowden, as we see what the government is grabbing on everybody, whether or not they suspect you of a crime, you know, we're all now considered to be guilty. And they're going to comb through our lives to see if we are violating any of their thousands and thousands of regulations, anything that they can pull up on us. And, of course, if you become a pain for the government, if you are a dissenter, if you criticize some of their policy, you will be investigated. You will be intimidated. That's what we see in the case in Tennessee, where we see a journalist trying to get information about prisoners that he believes are being ill-treated, only fed twice a day and other things. He was just trying to get some information with the Freedom of Information Request, and he was investigated by the sheriff, intimidated by the sheriff with home visits, background checks, even turning his name over to Homeland Security to be investigated. But when it comes to medical stuff, what we need to understand, one of the reasons that we oppose Obamacare is not just because it's extremely expensive and inefficient, because it's a welfare program. It was written by the insurance companies, and it's a welfare program for the insurance companies. That's really who it's a welfare program for. That's one reason to oppose it. The other reason to oppose it is because the government is going to use that as another point to investigate your life, to control your life. When we look at the justifications that we see from big statists in areas like New York, where Bloomberg banned soda pop, they're always talking about how you are a cost to society. Now, if everything is being provided by the government, if they're providing all the health care, What do you think they're going to say about your cost to society? What do you think they're going to demand to control in your life if they say that they're providing all of your health care? But there's another aspect to that, of course, and that is they're going to use it to pry into your life to see if you do something like that they don't approve of, like own a gun. We also see that the American Medical Association is alerting doctors to probe for that sort of information. And it goes even one step farther. On a story today on Infowars, John Rappaport points out that a website, MedAI, that's medicalartificialintelligence.com, MedAI says, why is predictive modeling essential to healthcare? Say it's not just helpful, it's essential to government-run healthcare. They say the algorithms of predictive modeling can analyze hundreds of data points to make a diagnosis or a prediction of risk. Well, that's fine if they're just looking at healthcare, right? Is it going to stop there? Or are they going to be doing a diagnosis to see if you are a threat to a political party, if you're a political threat, if you're a risk for the state? If they see that in any of these factors, then they're going to start coming after you in a more detailed way. That's what happens in an authoritarian state. We saw that in Tiananmen Square, as we had the 25th anniversary of the government crackdown there, as people were talking about that, they said people don't even know what happened if they weren't alive at that time. The younger generation, when presented with pictures of the Tank Man, think that it's a piece of art or that it's a parade that they're looking at. They have no idea what happened because the government has been able to flush that down the memory hole in the terms of 1984. That kind of Orwellian state where the government controls all information, where the government shuts down all political dissent, all political activity, where they comb your life for every detail, where they take your children away and sexualize them in a kind of Brave New World approach. That's what we're concerned about. That's what we're going to be talking about. Alex Jones is going to be talking to us. He's going to be calling in. He's going to take this in a little bit more depth, and we're going to be joined
We're on the mark.
Welcome to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. Alex is going to be joining us in the next hour. He wants to talk about these amazing stories that are up on Infowars about a new law in Michigan mandating that if anytime you take your child to the doctor, they're going to have a private consultation where the parents are not allowed to be present. The parents aren't allowed to know what's being discussed, and that's going to happen whether you like it or not. As well as we see on the other spectrum, a sheriff in Tennessee who is given a request for information because a journalist who runs an organization reporting on prisons believes that there's some maltreatment of the prisoners going on there, so he files a Freedom of Information request, and he's the one who gets investigated. Of course, the request is denied, but he's investigated. Now, this half hour of the Alex Jones Show is brought to you by My Patriot Supply. Just as we are telling you that you need to get prepared to take care of your own life so that you don't get caught up in this government surveillance system that's healthcare is now becoming, patriots everywhere are getting prepared, and they're doing it with one of my favorite companies, MyPatriotSupply.com. MyPatriotSupply.com offers high-quality survival gear and is the home of the Patriot Pantry line of emergency food storage. The food is delicious, easy to prepare, put together with GMO-free crops, storable for up to 25 years, and it's developed with space-saving and secure food storage bins, unlike flimsy plastic pails that you find almost everywhere else. Visit MyPatriotSupply.com/Alex today for special offers. That's MyPatriotSupply.com/Alex. The globalists are counting on you to be unprepared. Fight back. Get prepared at MyPatriotSupply.com/Alex today. Now, as I was just mentioning, this is the 70th anniversary of D-Day. CNN had a story of a veteran named Jim Pee Wee Martin. He's 93 years old. He jumped when he was just 23 into that gunfire. He said it was a lot easier parachuting in at 93 onto Normandy Beach because nobody was shooting at him. But this is what else he had to say. He said, everybody was scared all the time. If they tell you anything differently, they're full of crap. But you just do what you had to do regardless. He said, that's the difference. That's the difference. You do what you had to do. And we had a story earlier about a young man who stopped the shooting at a Christian school in Seattle. He jumped the gunman. All he had was pepper spray. He had to wait until the gunman was reloading because he didn't have a firearm, but he took it upon himself to stop this guy who was shooting at innocent civilians. We still have heroes in America, but Obama is on Normandy, and he's talking about the veterans, praising the veterans as he should, but doesn't it ring hollow when he does it? As we've seen this week with Bergdahl, as it's come out that many servicemen who were in Afghanistan died looking for this guy who deserted, as people are now saying he declared jihad, that he voluntarily went over to them. He was with them for 5 years. They're now trying to back out of the situation where it's a clear situation where they violated the exact letter of the law about 30-day notice. They're trying to back out of that and say that they did it for his health. But Obama is there. He's there with other European leaders, and as we see, NATO and Europe and America are now pushing to start a new Cold War with what's going on in Ukraine. They may even start a third world war. And then there's the VA scandal. It just came out today that the acting VA secretary said that 18 vets in a Phoenix hospital died while they're on a waiting list. 18. And further in the article, it says that investigators have concluded that up to 1,700 veterans had been placed on a so-called secret list, quote unquote, and they weren't even in line for medical appointments that they had requested. In other words, these people think they're going to get health care. They've been put on a secret list, and they're not even on any list. They're going to just sit there forever. It kind of sounds like Obamacare, doesn't it, where you go to this malfunctioning website, you think you sign up, and then when you go to get health care, you find that you're not signed up, that this thing didn't work. When we look at what happened with the World War II vets, there's a very, very important story that we need to remember that happened in Tennessee. We just see this story out of Tennessee where the sheriff is now calling Homeland Security on anybody who investigates his wrongdoing. And there was corruption in Tennessee as some of these veterans came back from World War II. It's something called the Battle of Athens. And Leanne McAdoo did a special report on this last night on the Nightly News, and it gives you an insight into why Homeland Security and others who are trying to operate this secret surveillance police state are so afraid of veterans. Here's that report.
The Battle of Athens, Tennessee is not only a pristine example of the fight for democracy and freedom, but it's also an example of maybe why the government sees returning veterans as a threat. A town infested with corrupt cops-turned-politicians who were lining their pockets by doling out tickets was turned upside down by some 3,000 veterans returning from World War II. The self-described wild vets became the target of law enforcement, who made a habit of picking up GIs and fining them heavily for just about anything. As election season approached, some of the returning veterans resolved to challenge the existing political monopoly by fielding their own nonpartisan candidates and working for a fraud-free election. The GI candidates promised an honest ballot count and reform of county government. But on Election Day, a town normally patrolled by just 15 deputies was swarmed with almost 200 armed deputies who turned up to patrol the precincts. Conflicts, of course, arose during polling, and a black man was shot in the back while trying to escape an officer assault. And when the polls closed, deputies seized the ballot boxes and took them to the jail. Opposition veterans responded by arming themselves and marching to the jail. In the end, the door of the jail was dynamited and breached. The barricaded deputies surrendered, and the ballot boxes were recovered. And the recouped ballots certified the election of the 5 GI nonpartisan league candidates. Now, in the present day, not only do we face rampant election fraud, what with e-voting and millions miraculously rising from the dead to cast their vote for President Obama, but the Battle of Athens also demonstrates how veterans are fearless. I mean, they've already stared right into the face of evil during battle, so they're not going to be afraid to stand up to tyranny when they return to the states. And this is what makes them enemy number one to a government that is hell-bent on totalitarianism. A controversial Department of Homeland Security assessment from 2009 lists returning veterans among terrorist risks to the U.S. A Morgan County, Indiana police sergeant recently admitted that the increasing militarization of domestic police departments is partly to deal with returning veterans, who are now seen as a homegrown terror threat.
Tanks, guns, armor, all tried and tested on the battlefield. Now some of it is here in central Indiana on our streets, being used to keep us safe.
Plus, you have a lot of people that are coming out of the military that have the ability and the knowledge to build IEDs and to defeat law enforcement techniques.
during the standoff between cattle rancher Cliven Bundy and the Bureau of Land Management. The majority of the militia that rallied to Bundy's side were veterans. And while the mainstream media tried to paint the militia as lawless and intimidating, residents of Nevada who witnessed the exchange expressed their support for the militia who did the job their sheriff failed to do.
That is bull crap. Those are my children and this is my community. And if Metro does not have the guts to come out and protect us, what are you here for? What do we pay you guys for?
I want to tell every one of them militia, thank you, because not one of our government officials, not one of our sheriffs or a Metro would have saved us that day. They didn't save us that day.
And the government's disdain for veterans is evident in the sorry state at Veterans Affairs. The Phoenix Healthcare Center was busted creating secret waiting lists that amounted to little more than death panels for 40 veterans. 1,700 vets there were never even placed on a list at all, rather left to suffer indefinitely. And now 42 VA centers across the country are under investigation for possible abuse of scheduling practices, indicating the vast scope of contempt facing returning soldiers. So imagine the betrayal felt by veterans when they learned that the Obama administration had traded 5 top Taliban commanders in exchange for 1 Army sergeant, considered by some to be a deserter, and whose attempted rescue on multiple occasions cost soldiers their lives. But rather than get caught up in the mass distraction that is this prisoner exchange, stay focused on the real issue. Our government wants to paint veterans as America's next terror threat. These are men and women who took an oath to protect the United States of America, even if it cost them their lives. Why are they the threat? Because they're threatening you or me? No. It's because veterans have been trained to take down America's enemies, and the shadow government that's now running this country is the real enemy number 1. Veterans, your skills and knowledge will take down the shadow government, and they know it. But don't play directly into the government's hand by allowing yourselves to be manipulated into a self-fulfilling prophecy of extremism. Instead, soldier up for the info war.
Great report from Leanne McAdoo. That's the sort of thing you can see at Prison Planet TV on a nightly basis. We hope that you'll support that by becoming a subscriber. If you become a subscriber, you can share that subscription with up to 10 other people who can simultaneously watch the news every night, as well as special reports, as well as all of Alex's documentaries, and there's quite a few of them. So it's a great way to wake up your friends and family. It's a great way to support our operation here. Now I'm joined with Anthony Gucciardi here in the studio. Anthony, it's pretty amazing, isn't it, that we see the veterans so poorly treated. We see them being experimented on. We see them going to veterans hospitals being told that they're on a waiting list to get health care, and yet they're on this secret waiting list. Listen to this before you comment. Columbia, Missouri, 19 were on a secret waiting list. St. Louis, 26. Kansas City, 37. Wichita, 20. And Phoenix, the big one, 1,700 were on a secret waiting list. They thought they were on a waiting list to get health care. They're just, here, I'll write your name down and make you feel good and just shove you off to the side. And some of these people have died. 18 in Phoenix died waiting for treatment because they put them on these secret lists. That's the kind of treatment that people who have pledged to support the government get from the people that they're pledged to support. They really need, like these vets who fought at the Battle of Athens, Tennessee, they really need to be focused on defending their family, defending their homes, and defending the Constitution.
This is the symptom of the collapsing medical paradigm. All around us, we see it. And all around us, we find doctors rejecting patients, these lists that aren't so secret. I mean, you could look at Staff Sergeant Joe Biggs, the Infowars reporter. He was bleeding internally, and they told him, yeah, it could be a month or so before we even see you. Or Weldon, who is under the VA, who works in the warehouse here. He had strep throat. I mean, you could look at his throat. You could look down his throat, huge white bumps everywhere, extreme pain, couldn't even swallow water. And he went in and they said, yeah, you know, we're not too sure what you have. It might just be a common cold. We're not sure we can treat you. And 2 weeks later, he finally kept going during lunch, like every single day. And they eventually said, yeah, we'll finally do a test. 4 days later, they call him and say, yeah, it was strep throat. We're going to work on getting you antibiotics. At this point, he could hardly talk. And he was thinking, well, why don't I just go to a regular doctor at this point? These people are shifting from the VA to the regular MDs, but the regular MDs are so taxed with the healthcare system that is complete garbage that they're all integrating to what's known as integrative medicine now. The whole system is collapsing, and they see this. All the smart MDs are going to natural alternative solutions.
And really what's happening to the veterans is they're really kind of the canaries in the coal mine, because as people were as they're bringing on Obamacare, as 20 years ago when Hillary wanted Hillary Cares, they were putting it, everybody was saying, look at the VA. If the government can't run just a hospital system just for a subsection of the population, how are they going to do it for everybody? Right? Total mismanagement, total disregard, even for the people who have put their life on the line for this government. They're not just ordinary citizens who are out there. I mean, they have defended this government, and the government betrays them to this degree. And so can we really trust the government's healthcare system to take care of us? Of course we can't.
It's like gun control for your biology. And what people don't realize is most of this is based on mental illness, not physical illness. I mean, you can look at some of the articles we're going to talk about today and also provide exact solutions and get into how we can transform our bodies in ways that don't rely on the medical paradigm. But specifically, we could look at the New York Times saying most will be mentally ill at some point in their lives, saying that more than half of Americans will develop a mental illness at some point in their lives. So you go, what does that even mean, a mental illness? It's so broadly defined that it means nothing. You could have a mental illness if you recently lost a loved one. You know, that's defined as a mental illness. You will therefore be given pharmaceutical drugs. And then the issue is, this study actually goes on. There's a lot we can get into.
More mentally ill than you were to
of
start
course.
with in most cases.
I mean, I was on them before. When I was younger, I didn't know, and I thought they could actually maybe help me, and I felt like a zombie, and many others were. But the whole system now, what's good, there is a blessing in disguise here. The doctors, as some are quoted in this article as well, this is an older piece, the newer ones coming out today, all the doctors are saying, this is madness. We need to start looking for alternatives. And that's what's happening is the doctors now are seeing, because it's like a person walking around at first, they had some cancer cells growing in their body, you know, a little tumor they could hide under their shirt. Now it's the healthcare system in the United States is a walking tumor. It is just like oozing pus everywhere. And even the most conservative doctors can see there's something wrong here. And now they're actually pushing against the government. And the government and the pharmaceutical industry are the ones funding all of these studies saying that we're all mentally ill, everything's fine, we shouldn't treat people over the age of 70 for anything, all of this. And that's what's happening with these waiting lists, is they're actually looking at these, you know, fake studies that are funded by the pharmaceutical giants and the government, where it is population control. It is basically, if you're not prescribing you know, antidepressants, then it doesn't matter. All of this is culminating to the collapse. But amid the collapse, the rats are all scurrying out, everything's going crazy, and the people are the ones suffering.
And I know this is a global problem because, of course, these large pharmaceutical companies are global multinational corporations. When we were in Copenhagen covering Bilderberg, there was an article here I've got on the Copenhagen Post right here. They're talking about close to 1 in 3 Danes mentally ill. And they said, according to a new research study, they had a quarter of all the Danes under the age of 50 had been treated for mental illness at some point in their life. They said they expected that to go up. That was only the tip of the iceberg. They had only, because of the way they had structured the study. But the bottom line is, a lot of that, as you pointed out, is broadly diagnosed. Any kind of depression is immediately, they're given very strong SSRI drugs or whatever. We see that this shooter, this young kid who killed those women, because he said he was sexually frustrated or whatever, we see that he was on Xanax.
Every single time.
Every time. That's the common thread. And, of course, they won't talk about that.
If Vegas had a betting game for all the mass shooters and crazy people, if you would just put $1 million every single time that they were on a pharmaceutical drug like an antidepressant, you'd be a very wealthy man. But look what they don't tell you in that article that they tell you in the other ones. I found this in the New York Times. It says, the findings of those studies are frequently cited by researchers, the ones that say that everyone's mentally ill, policymakers, and drug manufacturers, to emphasize the importance of diagnosing and treating mental illness. And then another one goes on to talk about how the drug manufacturers and the government were 2 of the main funders of the study. So they fund it, then they use it to push the actual drugs on the population. And that's obvious to most people, but guess what? They're admitting it over and over and over again. How is that possibly real science? It's phony, fake science, and that's what's happening with this collapsing paradigm.
Thank you, Anthony Gucciardi. And Anthony is going to be joined by Dr. Group in the next hour. We're going to talk to him about things that you can do to take over your individual health issues to make sure that you're protecting yourself and your family. So join us then. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. We're going to be joined in the next hour with Dr. Group and Anthony Gucciardi talking about how you can take control of your personal health so that you don't get sucked up into this healthcare system that's not only inefficient but invasive, part of the surveillance state, part of a state, as we learned today from an article from Anthony Gucciardi, where they believe in Michigan that they can take away your children whenever you take them to the doctor. They can take them away for private sexual consultations that you're not allowed to attend, that your children can block you from knowing anything about it, and that they will not allow you to opt out of this in any way, shape, or form. Very disturbing. So Alex is going to be joining us to talk about that. We've been talking about the 70th anniversary of D-Day. Today is June the 6th, the beginning of the invasion of Normandy 70 years ago. And as I look at this and I look at the horrific situation that these young soldiers were put in, the guy who jumped today at the age of 93, he was 23, but the guys that he was jumping with, most of them were teenagers. They were teenagers that were jumping into this situation, teenagers that were dying. Strauss and Howe have talked about how in a book called The Fourth Turning, as I've mentioned several times when I've talked here on the radio about the repeating of history, the rhyming of history, the rhythm of history, they point out that there's a cycle that you rise to a crisis point about once every 70 to 80 years, and they see that happening very soon for us. As a matter of fact, they believe that it already started around 2007, 2008. They wrote their book 10 years earlier than that. It's something like World War II and the Great Depression. Earlier, before that, it was the Civil War. Before that, it was the Revolutionary War. Going back, they trace this cycle back all the way back to the mid-1400s. So what are we going to be facing? And the question is, when this brave generation, as Tom Brokaw called them, the greatest generation, when they fought and died, when they fought evil, did they know where this had come from? There's an excellent article by Kurt Nimmo on Infowars.com. The greatest generation sacrificed for bankers. And he points out that as they're recreating these parachute drops and fireworks displays and movies, where 60 million people, 2.5% of the world's population, were killed, he said the responsibility for the staggering loss of life and property is uniformly placed on Hitler and the Nazis. But excluded from the official history is the fact that Hitler and the National Socialists would not have risen to power without the help of international bankers and American and German corporations like the ones we just covered at Bilderberg. Professor Anthony Sutton's Wall Street and the Rise of Hitler documents how key Wall Street financiers and other international bankers subsidized the rise of Hitler and the Nazis. Most notably, the late Senator Prescott Bush, grandfather of former President George W. Bush, was a director and shareholder of companies profiting from the Nazi war machine and its destruction in Europe. In a 2004 Guardian article, they obtained information from newly discovered files in the U.S. National Archives that a firm of which Prescott Bush was a director had been involved with financial architects of Nazism. That's from Ben Aris in Berlin and Duncan Campbell. They said, remarkably, little of Bush's dealings with Germany has received public scrutiny, partly because of the secret status of the documentation involving him. When I look at what happened, to me, the people who fought in World War II are embodied by the character that you see portrayed in the movies of Captain America. I mean, that's what they drew their inspiration from, straight up, honest, totally lacking in guile, people who would sacrifice themselves for it. And yet, like Captain America, that generation has America overall fallen asleep after that great struggle against evil, not realizing that Hydra, that this secret Nazi organization has enacted the same kind of control through the bankers that initially started World War II to begin with. We're going to be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. We're going to be joined in the next segment by Anthony Gucciardi and Dr. Group, and they're going to be talking about things that you can do to protect your health, your family, to take control of it as an individual, because it's not only your life now, but it's also your liberty that is being threatened by this healthcare bureaucracy. As we see in an article breaking on Infowars today, a Michigan mother who is told that she has no way to opt out of a private interview about sexual education with her child when she takes them to the doctor. And of course, we see in many cases that they're using your medical information to profile you. They may use it to attack you. They may use it to pry into your life, but they will also use it now to pry your children away from you, even more so than happens through the control points of government schooling. But as we were going to the break, I was talking about the 70th anniversary of D-Day, about the greatest generation, and how I believe Captain America was a composite character that really kind of captured the essence of that generation. The straightforward people who had sacrificed their lives to protect other people, to stop bullies, as he continually says. And yet I also believe that there's another analogy to be taken from Captain America, and that is that that generation and America in general has essentially fallen asleep like Captain America did, as you see him wake up in the second Captain America movie to find that he's living in an authoritarian police state, where they're going to not only watch everything that everybody does, where they don't care about giving people a trial before they attack them, where they're setting up a mechanism to essentially destroy, literally kill dissidents immediately. That's the kind of America that he wakes up to. It's time that all Americans wake up to that, and we stop thinking about the fact that we're the good guys, the saviors of the world, and realize that we're the guys now where the NSA lives, where these people have moved that were part of the Nazi operation. As I mentioned in the last segment, Kurt Nimmo has an excellent article pointing out the banker origins of World War II. But, you know, there was another aspect of it, of course, at the end of the war. There's something called Operation Paperclip, where a lot of key scientists were brought over. Now, of course, everybody wants to talk about Wernher von Braun, but there are other scientists that were, when they came over, they didn't do things that were benign, like making rockets to go to the moon. Instead, they continued their human experimentation. There's an excellent book called A Terrible Mistake, The Murder of Frank Olson and the CIA's Secret Cold War Experiments. Now, the author, H.P. Albarelli, in his preface, he's gone back and he's gotten these documents that have been declassified, and it's a very, very meticulous chronicling of what happened in this guy's life. And of course, Frank Olson was someone who worked for the CIA in medical experimentations when they were doing the CIA was doing the LSD experiments and that sort of thing. He told his wife and his family that he had made a terrible mistake, and shortly after that, he was suicided. Now, that is interesting enough, but what I found to be fascinating about that was not only just the fact we know that there were a lot of scientists that were brought over, but exactly what they were doing. And he chronicles that meticulously in that book. Now, he makes a mistake of thinking that, well, you know, this happened 50, 60 years ago, and fortunately now the CIA is all better now. No, it's not. It wasn't going through the terrible twos. It's only gotten worse. It's only gotten better at what it does. We see people like William Binney, who is a technical director of the NSA, warning us that we're becoming like East Germany. And so over and over again, we see that this is a pattern of behavior. When we go to the Bilderberg Group, we see that they hatched the plans for a united Europe, doing with bankers, with currency, with financial controls like the euro, what they could not do with guns, printing the paper to take over the world. That was what they told some of the corporations that they were working with. They said, imagine yourself as dictators of Europe. Well, we don't have to imagine anymore, not when we see Goldman Sachs bankers replacing elected politicians, democratically elected politicians. Stay with us. We're going to be right back with Anthony Gucciardi and Dr. Group. How can you take control of your health and your privacy? Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and I'm joined in studio with Anthony Gucciardi. And we're going to talk to Anthony as well as to Dr. Group about what you can do to take control of your individual health. In other words, to take control of your life, because if you don't have health, and this medical system that they're creating not only pries into your life, as we've been talking about with these news articles that are surfacing today, but of course it also can destroy your life, as we've seen with these articles about the VA system, the waiting lists that are going on forever, assuring you that you have health care, even though you really don't. I mean, that what's happening at the VA is really a metaphor for the larger Obamacare system, isn't it?
It is. I wanted to get into a few key news pieces that kind of tie into what you were talking about earlier. You were talking about the experts doing the research historically and seeing that we're at a pinnacle of some type of collapse or catastrophic event. And you were making parallels to World War II, World War I, even the Civil War. Now, my theory is that that might happen. We might actually have World War III. It's very possible looking at the geopolitical situation. But imagine if the Infowar is the pinnacle of this trigger.
Right.
And if we look at some of these news pieces we're about to get to here in a second, we get to the understanding that things are so bad now that even some of the government officials are pulling back and speaking out. And what that can do is it can trigger a radical transformation. It could be good, it could be bad, but overall, they will systematically attempt to stop the transformation. And I believe, and I agree, 2007, 2008, that was kind of the beginning. What if we are at the pinnacle right now of the Infowar, at the pinnacle of the intellectual war? And looking at these stories here.
That's true. Let me, before you go into those stories, when they looked at this, they pointed out, going all the way back to the 1450s, that it doesn't always result in war, but it always results in a massive transformation, a complete remaking of society.
Right. Exactly.
And so that it could be that it's an info war, but one thing for sure, I believe, is that it is going to be a massive transformation of society. And so the question is, who's going to transform it? Are we going to win the info war? Are we going to transform it into one that is a more open, more free society? Or are we going to descend into this surveillance state, this police state that they're trying to create?
That is the exact question. And overall, I think if you look historically with the kings and battling each other and everything, it's always been a physical kind of aggressive attack. Now, the biggest form of change, just looking at this, I wanted to talk about how one comic in a Japanese comic that was very popular ended up changing the whole dichotomy of the Fukushima situation in Japan. It doesn't even make sense to kill people over actually, disseminating information anymore. The new biggest tool is not a siege weapon. It's not a catapult. It is online media. It's the biggest thing. Why would you even choose to go to war if you can destroy a nation or anything using information? That is the answer. And just look at this. Some city leaders want to stop treating water with fluoride. That's happened for a while, but this is now in the mainstream. And this coincides with the fact that a top medical journal labels fluoride a neurotoxin just this week. So it's all happening, and this is all in the mainstream media, and it has been over and over time again, but this is so in your face now that even Russia is coming forward and telling the UN that they need a GMO watchdog. And Russia's been at the forefront in some of this, really calling the United States out, not even because Russia cares necessarily about some of these things, but just because the United States is behind so much of this evil, that it's advantageous for them to shine the light on the United States, which happens to just be advantageous for humanity as a whole. So it's an interesting situation with that.
There's a lot more awareness of that in Europe than there is here. I mean, I talked to people in Copenhagen, and they were talking about how they'd had over 1,000 people at the March Against Monsanto there because they were concerned about GMO. I talked to one guy privately, and of course, they've never fluoridated the water in Denmark. One guy said he's trying to wake up his friends. He listens to Infowars all the time. He said, when I tell them that they're fluoridating the water in the United States, they don't believe me. They think I'm a crazy conspiracy theorist. I mean, we get exactly the opposite. When we tell people in America, look at the studies that show how bad this is for you, the health effects of fluoride, they laugh at it. Oh, that's not true. That's not true. Whereas in Europe, they look at it and they know how bad it is. They can't believe that our government could get away with putting that in our water.
Well, let me just tell you a good example of how bad this has gotten with the denial, the overall insanity, and then actually a good story I want to share as well. But read this, where it says that the top priority of this group for Russia, the UN GMO Council, is to scrutinize how consuming GMOs would affect human health in the long run. So they're just saying, hey, we should actually look at how these genetically modified organisms affect our health before we taint the entire world food supply with it. And it's like, oh my goodness, how could you even possibly think that? No,
but we can't wait because see, it's all about Monsanto and these corporations making profits. And if we take our time and look at the effects of what they're creating, then they lose their patent. So they got to rush it out to us without any testing so they can make the most amount of money.
Well, what's also really funny is they know that people aren't buying it anymore. So they're going around patenting all these different seed types. And what's happening is the organic farms are being run out entirely because they're going after the organic farms for their patenting because they know what's happening. But let me share with you a good story. So I was at a restaurant the other day in Austin, and our server was this woman, and nothing against people with tattoos, but she was covered in tattoos, you know, very short haircut, and looked like somebody that would, your average trendy, that would absolutely hate Alex or anything like that. And she goes, "Hey, are you Anthony Gucciardi?" I said, "Yes, I am." She goes, "I love Alex," you know, but that wasn't the key thing. That happens all the time. What the key thing was, is she explained to me, she goes, "Yeah, I used to be a huge fan of Obama. You know, I still used to consider myself an ancient type of Democrat. But how can you go along with this system when it's so disgustingly corrupted? How can you even for a semblance of a second think that this is real?" And then the person next to her, who also looked like somebody that was, you know, typically would be a total trendy, was like, "No, I completely agree." She's like, "I'm not saying I'm Republican or Democrat, but she's like, I cannot align myself with anything these days that's in the news, which is predominantly Democrat." And then the whole, it was like a train. There was like 8 people then like conversing and be like, "Yeah, it totally makes sense." And this one guy was like, "I didn't even know we had a third option." And they were like, "No, you should listen, Alex. It makes all sense." And they were like, "Oh, wow." It's like you don't even know the kind of people that really get this. Everyone is getting this. It's a total transformation. That's what they're afraid of.
Exactly. There's certain things that are kind of core. This whole week, for instance, NPR has been doing a PR campaign, and I guess that's National Public Relations Radio for the government, has been doing a campaign about Common Core, trying to tell people how wonderful, how advanced it is, how it's not actually a curriculum. But at the same time, today one of the news articles is how the governor of Oklahoma has said, we're not going to do Common Core anymore. And you've got people on both the left and the right. You've got people who are outside of the education establishment who don't like it, like me. I don't like governments running schools. I think that's a bad idea inherently. But then you've got people who are very much believe in that system, that are inside of it, and they're both revolting against this Common Core curriculum. And you've got people who are understanding that we can't have any freedoms to debate some of the other things that we do have genuine disagreements over if we live in a police surveillance state. If we have no rights, if we, you know, if this whole thing isn't rolled back. So there are some core things that the left and the right have to agree on that we have to get back to before we can, you know, we can't let them subdivide us on these other issues that, although they are important, we will not have the freedom to discuss those issues if we live in a police state, if we have the government controlling everything about our health care.
Well, it's almost like when the government does really, really bad things, it unifies everyone and it's advantageous to us. It's like the worse things they do, the more they overall lose support and we come together, which is their worst nightmare. And they think they can use divide and conquer, but when something like Obamacare comes out, or something like Common Core, or any of these things, or the GMO issue or whatever, we are united in such a way that it doesn't even matter if we have some differing of opinions on slight issues. It doesn't matter. All these issues are coming together, and they're having this massive effect where everyone can see in the middle. You know, it's like left, right, garbage. In the middle, we're all coming together and saying, well, it doesn't even matter. You know, if we can agree that Common Core is terrible, if we can agree that genetically modifying the entire food supply is probably not a good idea, you know, if we can agree that Obamacare is not free, it's a total failure written by the insurance companies, which pretty much everyone I've talked to agrees with. Anyone that actually, you know, besides the people that don't even know what you're talking about and just say, oh, I don't know about that, the totally delusional people that can never really be helped, everyone is in agreement. And that is the ultimate culmination. And going back to what you were saying, the ultimate, not even crisis, the ultimate turning point and the ultimate transformation that will supersede any world wars that have happened before it, because it will be an ideological transformation.
Yes.
Just like how we won World War II. Well, we won the war, but our ideological transformation was for the worse over time because we became decadent, fat, happy, and dumb.
Yes.
You know, now we're actually going to have lasting change through an intellectual revolution by winning the information war.
Yes.
And that is the only way to have success, or else we will be like Rome, we will be like the United States has become.
The way I look at World War II, for instance, is the way the Asymmetric Warfare Center looks at these other conflicts that we've had since then, where they would go in and they would have a tremendous military victory, but they couldn't hold the area because they couldn't get the minds and hearts and minds of the people that they had invaded or whatever. I think what happened was we won a physical war with World War II, but as far as the principles, as far as the ideas of eugenics, of total control, consolidation, and what the bankers were doing, essentially, we have lost that. And now that we're in an information age, hopefully this information war will help us to prevail in the information age, and hopefully we can do this as an information war. But the most important thing is who wins the hearts and minds of people. So regardless of whether there's a physical war or not, the info war is still going to be the ultimate high ground. And the way to, whether there's a victory.
Absolutely. And the way to do that is to get out there to spread the information and also support key operations like Infowars. And that is why we have the Infowars Life products like Survival Shield X2, the new almost double strength Survival Shield, which is the same price as the old Survival Shield. We kept the same price. We enhanced the formula. We're going to talk to Dr. Group specifically, not on that, just health issues, but he can explain 7,000 to 10,000 feet below the Earth's surface. We take it from a salt solution that is around 200 million years old and take the super fine purple iodine crystals from that and create Survival Shield X2. And that is below Fukushima's devastating effects. That is, we are testing all of it for radiation before we get it out. And it is on sale right now for the same price as Survival Shield. Almost double strength at InfowarsLife.com. You're supporting the operation. You're supporting all of this and getting the word out and helping people, even the trendies, wake up.
That's great. And we're going to be talking to Dr. Group as soon as we come back. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. I'm joined in the studio with Anthony Gucciardi. We have Dr. Group on the line, and Alex is going to be joining us in just a second. Dr. Group, you've probably heard us talking in this last segment about the information war, about whether or not people are going to take control of their lives, take control of their health. What's your feeling on that?
You know, I feel we've come a long way considering the fact that more people are not getting the results that they want, especially in healthcare. And so they're going online and they're asking their doctors what they can do about their certain conditions and diseases. And their doctors are just, you know, clueless. So I think that the information that everybody's putting out is definitely having a good effect on society, and slowly but surely we're changing. But there's a major attack, as we know. Alex talks about it all the time, and we all talk about it, which is on our health care. I'm always about finding why things are happening, you know, and tracing back, whether you look at GMOs, you look at the fluoride in the water, you look at the psychological warfare that's going on, you look at the electromagnetic frequencies with the cell phones, I mean, the parasites that they're spraying, the toxins in the air, the food, the water, the beverages. Why is all that happening? I mean, why is this big conspiracy by the globalists going on? And it all traced back, if you look at the root cause of all of it, is to destroy the mind and destroy the body. The only opposition to the agendas that are going on right now is a healthy person, somebody who can think properly, somebody who's not stressed out all the time, somebody who's healthy, that has energy levels that are high, somebody who's not sick, or somebody who's not relying on the doctor. So what I've done is taken every single mentally abusing chemical out there, or brain-altering chemical, found out where it comes from, as well as every single substance that causes disease out there, and traced it all back. So one of the solutions is when people take the step to learn about all these things in their environment, whether it's coming in, wherever it's coming into their body from, and make changes in their life. I mean, because the stronger our mental capacity is, the stronger our body is. That's what they're really, really scared of. Because if you look at the spoke and hub model, and you have a body in the hub, a perfect healthy body that can think and that can function, and then you look at all the spikes or all the spokes around it, and fluoride is coming at you from one spoke, and chemtrails are coming at you from another, and the chemicals and heavy metals are all coming at you. Well, it's designed to lower your IQ. It's designed to make you not be able to think.
But people are realizing this, though, aren't they? On a really serious basis. I mean, looking at some of the key articles today, the city officials are now saying, hey, yeah, we do actually need to get this out of the water supply, as top journals are coinciding with this, saying it is bad. So the key thing is we can take our health into our own hands and succeed, but on a global level, people are waking up to this because it's so in your face and so evil. I mean, don't you find that as well?
Absolutely. I mean, I do find that. And even some congressmen and senators and stuff are contacting us wanting to know more information about fluoride, or more information about some of these other things. But so let's say you have all these chemicals that they're using in this psychological warfare. I mean, with that 17-year-old girl, you know, the mom, and then having doctors do private conversations that ties into the whole creation of the psychological warfare and the psychotropic drugs, which you talked about earlier, of having children diagnosed with some form of mental illness from the time they're young. From the time there's 5-year-olds that are committing suicide because of psychotropic drugs right now. They're setting this up to where if they ask these young children, do you have any depression? Do you have any anxiety or anything like that? They can be labeled with a mental illness from the time that they're at an early age. If you're labeled as a mental illness, the government automatically has control over you. They can throw you in jail. They can throw you in a mental institution. They can do whatever they want with you. Not only that, but you factor in the drugs that they're giving these children that contain fluoride derivatives, that cause suicidal tendencies, that cause low IQs. All this stuff is legal to do because they don't even need a diagnosis. How are you? There's no scientific testing through the blood or any type of MRI or any machine that can say, oh, this person has a mental illness. They just say, oh, you're biting your fingernails too much, you must have a mental illness. Or now you can leave a psychiatrist's office and not even be diagnosed with anything, and the psychiatrist can label you with a mental illness because you left without receiving care, which means you must be mentally ill from going there.
We're going to take a break, Dr. Group. We're going to be right back. That's what they're doing to gun owners. All they have to do is assert that you're mentally ill, and of course, that's the definition. How do you define mentally ill? How do you define a felony? We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. I'm joined in the studio with Anthony Gucciardi, and we have on the line Dr. Group, and we were talking just before the break about how the government can use the health system to gain control of your life. You know, we've had, in the wake of some of these shootings, we've had a lot of conservative commentators say, yeah, you know what, we really need, don't take guns away from honest people, but we really need to have heavier screening for people who are crazy or people who are felons. Well, you know what? The way you define those two things is very telling, because you can, who has a definition for who's insane? I mean, is that going to be the same type of thing we've seen in the Soviet Union, where they just merely, one individual asserts that you are, have some mental issues, and so now you're taken out? We've seen that happen in authoritarian societies before. Or even a felony. We've seen people charged with multiple felonies for releasing balloons on a beach because that was a felony offense. That person, when you think of someone with a mental illness, you think of somebody who is very dangerously insane. When you think of a felony, you think of somebody who is criminally dangerous. And yet those definitions and how they're defined, who defines them, what the process is for defining that is very, very important. And it just shows us how the health system can be used as a control point in our lives, not just for our personal physical health, but also for our freedoms. Dr. Group, you were talking about how they would use mental illness to control people. And, of course, we've seen that with Ritalin for many decades in the schools, diagnosing children as having attention disorder and then prescribing massive doses of Ritalin.
Right, because it's the easiest way to get into somebody at an early age, because there's no testing involved. They don't have to take blood work, or they don't have to do anything like that. They can just rely on what the teacher says. I mean, now they're even talking about doing mandatory psychological testing in schools. They're even doing it right now, where students in high school are filling out psychological tests, and then they're being referred to psychiatrists to get on some sort of medication. So, you know, in the medical system, the way it was designed initially was they had to go through a process of diagnosis. You had to go through blood tests, urine tests, hair tests. You had to go through a whole list of symptoms, and then the doctor would decide by reading those tests or any type of x-rays or any type of scan saying, okay, you fit the description for diabetes. You know, you have your glucose levels are off, et cetera, over a period of time. But with psychotropic or psychological or mental illnesses out there, there's no need for that. All someone has to do is go on a recommendation, or the parents, which are being manipulated also by other people around, especially teachers, are bringing their kids in, and their kids are leaving with some sort of medications. And you want to talk about not only the chemical warfare that's being put upon us, but talking about the information, the negative information out there. Well, how does that affect us? Because that's one of the strategies too, because it creates stress in us. You know, any type of negative news is always going to keep our immune system down because we're going to be stressed out all the time. They break up the families. So of course that causes stress and depression for the children. So you look at the negative emotions, you know, resentment, jealousy, anger in schools that's going on, especially the depression itself, the bullying in schools, all that's done by design because they know that they can affect you mentally, and then they're going to have you on prescription medications for all those mental disorders. And it's not just one medication, it's multiple medications.
Well, let me ask you a question, Dr. Group. How do people not realize, I mean, you don't need a deep business background to understand when there's a private screening room for your children and they tell them to take birth control and antidepressants, it's like a used car dealership. That you don't need a degree in business to understand that when you go to the doctor's office or when high schools are giving kids tests, psychological testing, and at the same time the government is funding the studies that show everyone is mentally ill, along with the pharmaceutical companies, that maybe something is going on here. And meanwhile, I've spoken to doctors, and I've seen the list. You can lose your license for texting a patient. If you have a patient that comes into your clinic or the hospital or wherever you work, and you have a patient and you text them on your personal cell phone and say something like, hey, hope you're feeling better, you can lose your license for that. But it's okay to privately screen 17-year-old girls or 12-year-olds in California and tell them they need birth control and to be sexually promiscuous, and that they need to be, you know, injected with 1 million vaccines, and that overall antidepressants are good and they're probably mentally ill without any actual screening. So how do people not see that? Because that seems pretty obvious to me. It sounds like a really evil used car dealership. And they can't even text a patient, but they can prescribe 17-year-olds antidepressants when they just broke up with their boyfriend or girlfriend and feel a little upset. How does that work?
It's the Band-Aid problem that we're dealing with. It's like you have something over here, so you just stick a Band-Aid over it and it fixes it. Parents don't want to deal with situations. They don't want to deal with the right way to deal with a child who is angry or depressed and spend the time. You have the father that's out working all the time now. You have broken families. The mother's, you know, has to have a job too. So there's really no family core values that are left. I mean, there's not people that are sitting around having nice family dinners anymore, or spending a lot of time with their kids and talking to their kids about their problems, because it's easier from what they've heard. You know, it's easy to manipulate the mind if you just tell people what they want to hear, or tell people something multiple times, you start believing it. And the constant commercials on TV, the constant media that they're reading, the constant pressure from all their friends, you know, they'll post, oh, my daughter is dealing with depression because she broke up with her boyfriend. And then the next thing you know, you have a bunch of their friends on Facebook saying, well, go see my doctor, go see my psychiatrist, you know, he'll take care of it. And you don't have to deal with it. He'll just give her an antidepressant and she'll be fine.
They don't care anymore. And it really shows who's in charge, though, too, because you have a bunch of weird bureaucrats in charge who are evil and basically making money on all of this. For example, I've read, and I wanted to get into this a little bit, I've read they list about once a month, I think, they send out emails and letters about doctors who've lost their license or have been suspended. And I've read them. Some of them are pretty serious, you know, like major surgical issues or whatever, cut a vein, artery or something horrible. But then I've read, you know, gave a patient a hug inappropriately. And it's like, what does that mean? You read the description. Oh, the patient felt better after a cold, so the doctor gave the female patient a hug, and the female patient felt uncomfortable, so he lost his license. Or another one was, I guess this doctor had gone to a restaurant or bar and seen the patient outside of work and said, hey, you know, so-and-so, hope you're feeling better. How are you doing? And she felt intimidated that he had gone up and talked to her. So they're losing their license for this kind of stuff because of the bureaucracy, but they're allowed to pretty much get away with anything else. Yeah. I mean, 800,000 people a year die from this.
And we're not allowed to know what the history is of a particular doctor or hospital. All that information is, again,
They can take all the money from the drug companies. And me and Group have talked before. He can highlight this. I've seen doctors' offices with all of the pens and the gifts and everything. They used to just give cars to doctors to prescribe things. They use women to come in, really attractive saleswomen for drug reps. And Dr. Group shared a story with me I'd like him to tell about, how they send in these really attractive drug reps, and they basically, make you sell these drugs, and that's fine. But you can't text a patient. This is how warped the system is. It's totally, totally insane. Dr. Group, do you want to share a story about how far the drug reps will go?
Well, it's all controlled is what it is. I mean, it's breaking out of that control mechanism. I mean, everything is controlled. The doctors it's the way they're trained. I mean, they're not trained in the root cause of disease. I mean, I know I went through multiple types of training. I spent my whole life trying to figure out how to reverse all this and how to share with people the answers that they need. And one thing nobody talks about is how do all these chemicals and everything get in the body to start disease? Well, they all float around in water. How many doctors have you heard talk about diseases associated with toxic water? Not many of them, because every living substance on the planet, including the earth itself, is composed of at least 80% water. If you were to suck all the water out of your body, you would just lay flat on the ground. And think about all the 100 trillion cells in your body. What makes a cell round? What makes a cell round is it's filled with water inside and it's filled with water around the outside. Actually, it's filled with seawater pretty much, considering the fact you have a lot of minerals in there. So the mechanism is to contaminate the water. What is air that we breathe? It's mostly water a lot of times. What are the oceans? Water. So they know by contaminating the water, and also how do electrical signals transfer in the brain and in the body. If you don't have the proper electrical water system in your body, and you throw aluminum into it or mercury into it or any of the other toxic chemicals or metals, then the water is going to be, you're not going to be able to fire those electrical signals properly. So really, if you break it all down and you look at why the mechanism that the agenda, the healthcare agenda of creating illness and sickness so they can make all the money, it really has to do, if you boil it all down to one thing, is contaminating the water.
And that's why they put neurotoxins in the water supply. And that's why they don't want you to have iodine. They took all the iodine out of the salt because it neutralizes some of that fluoridation. And that's why they just put all of the garbage now, not just the fluoride. They managed to justify that. All of the garbage now just goes straight into the water supply. And Dr. Group, you're talking about water on a cellular level, which is so specific. If even it's just altered in just a small way, your entire body will suffer, and your cells, in many cases, they can die, cellular death, right?
Yeah, I mean, a good researcher in water was Masaru Emoto, and he did studies, and he took a water droplet should look like a snowflake under a microscope when you freeze it. It should have 6 sides, and that's a crystal. It's like a semiconductor. A semiconductor is something that, can receive signals and transmit signals, and that's, if you look at the cell, our cells, they're really lined with semiconductors or gates or channels. Information can come in and out. And what Masaru Emoto did was he put chemicals in water and took a picture of it and showed that when water was exposed to chemicals, it broke that crystal up, and all it looked like was contaminated water. So if you
it was all brown and muddy. I've seen some of the photos.
And muddy, and then not only that, but he took it a step further, and he found out that words can affect water. He found out that sound can affect water. He found out that thoughts can affect water. And one of the things he found out that affects water more than anything else was the effects of electromagnetic radiation. So if that electromagnetic radiation can break and keep that crystalline structure of the water in your body and on the planet in a broken state, well, guess what? I mean, your body is going to go down the stairs of health every day instead of up the stairs of health every day.
And people can debate, whether or not the depth of our thoughts and everything inside of our bodies, own stressors and everything affects the way that the cells develop. And it, in many ways, it obviously does. But what is not debatable is that neurotoxins and radiation do absolutely affect our bodies in the water. And that is indisputable, and that's why their 2 main weapons are, of course, in many ways, EMF radiation, electromagnetic radiation, straight-up radiation as well, but also contaminating the water supply is one of the biggest things, beyond even going into GMOs, beyond even going into BPA, beyond even going into all of that. And that's why we are dedicated to solutions on every single one of those fronts. We've studied every single one of those fronts with Dr. Group, with others, looking at it. Okay, the water supply is being attacked. Okay, our hormones are being attacked with the BPA. Okay, we're being attacked with the radiation. Okay, we're being attacked with these superbugs that sometimes are being let out of these labs or developed in one way or another. Every single front, we're researching this and analyzing it and coming up with solutions. Some you can do at home, some you can use key herbs and everything like that. Every single front, it's important to look at and develop solutions for.
Yeah, I was surprised to see that documentary that we carry here. I think it's, is it Take Back Your Power, guys? Is that the name of it? Where they were showing some bugs on a leaf, and they were exposing them to smart meter radiation. And you could actually see all the bugs jerk in unison as this thing was pulsing. Now, of course, in Europe, in Italy, they demand that when they put in smart meters, at least they demanded that they run the signal down the wires. But here, we're doing it with a heavy pulsing of wireless EMF. Why? Oh, yeah. It's not necessary. It's absolutely not. You've already got a wire running there, so why would they do that wirelessly?
And I used to live in an apartment where they had 20 smart meters clustered on the end apartment unit. Can you imagine living near that? But at the same time, it's funny because they say it does nothing. Look at the birds in India. There was an article about the birds in India. They had to start making it unattractive for them to hang around on cell towers because they were just all dying. But it's safe. Yeah. It's all safe. It's all really good for you. Everything's
Talk
good.
About a canary in a coal mine. Now we got birds on power lines.
Well, I think instead of alarm clocks next to our bed, we should just have smart meters.
Yeah.
Right next to our head at all times. Just like the inserts on all the pamphlets for cell phones say you can't don't hold it near your head. If you look at it, read it. Read your iPhone pamphlet. It's like, hold it 10 inches from your head. And don't ever put it near your ear. And don't use it for more than 15 minutes a day. It's all lawyer-written stuff because they know the research. They've known it for 20 years.
That's right.
And they just want to cover themselves because when everyone gets brain cancer and brain tumors and start suing them, they'll say, hey, we told you it was going to kill you.
Dr. Laura Presley came in, and we were talking about smart meters, and she had a chart showing the amount of radiation that you get from different makes of phones, different models, a smartphone, an iPad, an iPhone. And it was amazing the amount of radiation that's putting out there just in a standby mode. And so, yeah, her recommendation was to make sure that you put it in, if you're going to set this and use it as an alarm clock, and a lot of people look at it the last thing before they go to sleep.
Just don't put it near your head.
Yeah, don't put it near your head. Put it in airplane mode.
And women, stop putting the cell phones in your bras under your shirts. It's not a good idea. But Dr. Group, what does this EMF on a daily basis really do to our bodies? What does it really, really do?
Well, the most damaging effect that it does is it alters the water and the communication between your cells. I mean, if the water inside your body is heating up and is shaking around, it's, your cells might not be able to absorb the calcium and the protein and the minerals it needs to produce whatever it's going to produce, whether it's a hormone or whether it's a insulin or synovial fluid or whatever. So not only is it putting radiation in your system, which has been known to cause cancer, but it's also altering the water substance. And something very interesting that I found was looking at all these toxic disease-causing agents, how are they getting in the body? Because you would think as a medical doctor, you would say, all right, well, first of all, they don't make the link that all these toxins are coming into the body, but I was like, how are these things, how are people getting these into the cells or into the water to begin with? And something that was really shocking that I found that is a very closely guarded secret by Big Pharma is the fact that 95% of these disease-causing toxins enter your body through your intestinal lining, through your small intestine and your large intestine, which you have about 25 feet of small intestine and about 10 feet of large intestine. We have so many problems with intestinal disorders right now that it's rampant. Even from the time kids are born, they're constipated. You have IBS, you have bloating, you have gas, you have everything. But regardless of what you're taking in your body, the root cause of disease or the entry point of all these chemicals, especially since the GMOs are burning holes through the intestinal lining, is all these undigested food particles and toxins are going straight directly into the bloodstream. And then the body is having a hard time breaking them down. And the bodies are developing and storing these toxins in different types of organs ultimately lead.
Stay with us. We're going to be right back with Dr. Group, and Alex is going to join us to talk about this new Michigan medical record law. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight here in Austin with Anthony Gucciardi, and we are on the phone with Dr. Group. And we were just talking about toxins and EMF and the effects that they have on our lives and about what we can do about it. What can we do about it, Dr. Group? How do we defend ourselves? How do we take control of our health, of our family's health?
Well, the first thing is to be educated about it. You know, obviously listening to Alex and listening to all of us and learning about going through your kitchen and learning about what the chemicals are that you're putting in your body. And then also, you know, paying attention. You know, we've done a lot of research in developing the Survival Shield X2 and the Infowars product line, Infowars Life product line over there using, you know, very state-of-the-art equipment and processing technologies that we're going to be showing you some behind-the-scenes footage of fairly soon. And I'll be talking through some of those videos. But the best thing people can do is to drink clean water, number one. Drink clean water, and I always add organic apple cider vinegar in there, raw organic apple cider vinegar. Right here, if you want to look at some of the things that we're doing, especially with iodine, that's one of the most important substances that I've found that can help restore your health, because there's so many conditions of hypothyroidism out there. There's so many conditions of iodine deficiency. So what we do, how we start with that, is we get the purest iodine crystals that you can find from deep in the earth, like Anthony was talking about earlier. And these are high purity. That's 99.99% pure iodine crystals.
Now, let's be clear, though. That is the highest purity grade in the world right now. And you're the only one providing that.
Yes, it is. We've gone through to a great extent to be able to solidify this source, because we test every batch of iodine that's coming in as well to make sure it's pure, to make sure there's no radiation in it. Some of the other companies out there are using iodine from sea sources, and I'm not saying that could be contaminated, but with everything that's happening with Fukushima right now, and Fukushima pretty much going critical, and, you know, all the
well, you know, whether it's from a sea source, it can be good if it's pure, but we've made a decision right now to transfer to this key process where it is 7,000 to 10,000 feet below the earth. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting now how, amid all of this, we just looked at this with Dr. Group and found this to be the key thing. But it's interesting now, all these stories coming out from the World Health Organization and others, such as this one that just came out, pregnant women need iodine supplement, doctors say. But they don't tell you what kind of iodine to take. They give you the bad iodine. The iodine that is better than nothing that the government is hoarding, but overall you can't be taking on a daily basis. You know, they give you potassium iodide. Mm-hmm. And that's not something you want to be taking on a daily basis to protect yourself. It's something that you only want to take if you're seeing a mushroom cloud come up.
Right. It's an emergency measure, right?
Or if you're
just fill up the thyroid so that you don't absorb the radiation so quickly into your thyroid.
Exactly.
So it's just a blocking mechanism.
It's a blocking mechanism. Or you could argue, really, that with all of the sodium fluoride in the water supply, that it's basically like we're seeing a mushroom cloud right now, and it could be beneficial, and it's better than nothing. Mm-hmm. But we weren't satisfied with better than nothing, so we had to go with the real serious nascent iodine from the actual crystals deep within the earth, and now we've transferred to this whole new process. And what Dr. Group was saying is basically this is the front line of defense against the toxins that are going into your body. This is the front line of defense we've found, according to the research, according to the experts, the front line, and that is why it is called Survival Shield, and now we have X2. And we're going to be showing the crystals on screen at prisonplanet.tv or infowars.com/show, and some of the other processes as well.
Yeah, if you're watching the video feed, we've got some shots there from the laboratory, and we're going to be talking to Dr. Group when we come back. He's going to show us a little bit of the processes there. We've already seen some shots of that iodine that they're getting from 7,000 feet below the earth. Stay tuned. We're going to be right back, and Alex is going to be joining us. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight here in Austin, joined with Anthony Gucciardi here in the studio. We have Dr. Group at his lab, and he's going to take us around and show us a little bit of what's there. We've been seeing pictures of the crystals. They've got a very good source of iodine taken from 7,000 feet below the Earth's surface. Why? Because they want to make sure that it's not contaminated with radiation from Fukushima. Many sources of iodine use seawater, or they're taken from a shallow area where it could be contaminated. So they get it from very deep below the surface. They test it with for radiation presence. And we've just been talking to him about solutions to the toxins and the EMF that you come across in your life. I mean, he's talking about how those things affect you negatively. And Dr. Group, what can you tell us about the lab there, about the process?
And let's just be clear, this isn't just about iodine. The reason this lab is so key and the reason why Dr. Group is so key is because as they go around prescribing people antidepressant drugs, they're also shutting down natural manufacturers that have super high quality grade manufacturing techniques.
Yes.
Dr. Group's lab is literally a jewel of the natural health industry. It is the best. It is the highest state of the art. We should be thankful it exists, and we should fight for it. So anyway, thank you, Dr. Group.
Well, thanks. Yeah, this is behind-the-scenes footage, and this is very rare because most manufacturing facilities will not let you back behind closed doors. Because we're so transparent and because we want to show people, you know, the whole processing, we want to show how effective it is. This footage is made available exclusively to the Infowars Life team and Infowars customers. So right here, what you're going to see is you're going to see the iodine production room. As you can see, we use all glass vessels. You'll see a vessel mixing the actual iodine, and this is very rare. You know, these vessels are extremely expensive. They're made of borosilicate glass. I'm going to tell you from touring hundreds of manufacturing facilities in the past that nobody hardly ever uses full glass vessels. They use stainless steel, which can be contaminated, and especially when you're dealing with iodine is a oxidizing substance, you want to make sure that it's done in all glass. So it's a lot harder to do. Everything here is made by hand. I'm going to take you over to the quarantine room here, which is where all the ingredients come in. You know, this is very important because they all have to be tested. They all have to be approved. They have to be tested for microbes and make sure they're clean. It's what we ordered before they're released from quarantine. And when they're released from quarantine, then they can start going into production. The next thing that I'll show you is the V-blending room, and this is how you actually mix the powders. The Infowars Live team is going to be introducing some really high-tech encapsulated products here very shortly that we're working on. And this blender is how you actually blend effectively. If you have 8 or 9 ingredients in a product, you would need them equally mixed. And so this is how you do it the right way right here.
This looks like something from a futuristic movie from 2099 or something.
Yeah, it's really cool. After it gets blended, it goes on into encapsulation. Now, the encapsulation room, we have individuals in there that are doing it by hand on semi-automatic encapsulators. You know, this is what any capsule that you take, I mean, any capsule that you see or that you get from any vitamin store or anything like that, this is the process that it goes through if it's done in a CGMP certified or CGMP compliant facility.
And I think you're downplaying yourself. You use silica glass because you don't want to get metals to contaminate the actual everything you're producing. But specifically, a lot of the capsules come from China, and that's why they're toxic. You know, this is actually made in America, super high quality, CGMP certified, Dr. Group's laboratory.
Fascinating pictures there. We're going to be right back, and Alex Jones is going to be joining us in the next segment, so stay with us. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight. I've got Anthony Gucciardi here with me in the studio. We've been talking to Dr. Group at his lab. He's been giving us kind of an audio tour, and a lot of that maybe doesn't translate as well on radio as it should. Pretty amazing equipment. I had this gigantic V-shaped thing. Kind of looked like a Tesla anti-gravity machine or something to me. I don't know.
I know, and what's amazing is what he's doing is he's basically going beyond organic quality standards. And like I said earlier, it's not just about the iodine. It's not just about the products. The fact is that there's virtually no other factory doing this to these standards, the purity of everything he's doing. And we should appreciate that, even if we're looking outside of the amazing nutraceuticals that he's producing, because the FDA absolutely hates the nutraceutical companies that really are doing the right thing. And in reality, that's why we also see a lot of these companies offshoring their work to China, where their manufacturing process is dirty and full of contaminants and stuff like that.
Do you think in China they really have a quarantine area where they bring new materials in until they make sure they're cleaned? Or do they do everything in glass? I mean, do they even use stainless steel? I mean,
yeah, one of the videos group was showing has a containment area where every single thing he was bringing in, he was testing, not only for radiation and everything, but for other items as well. And there's actually a chain link fence around it, and it's locked with a deadbolt type lock. No one's even allowed to go in there. It's just to separate the super pure products from anything that's new and untested yet. And anything that's tested and it's below the standards, which are basically 000 across the board, it's discarded then or sent back.
Yeah. We've got Dr. Group on the line while he's still with us. Dr. Group, anything else you want to tell us about your laboratory there?
And recap on basically the health solutions and what we can do, as you were explaining, to reclaim our health and to, as you were saying, the water in our bodies needs to be cleansed and detoxed, or else we will never achieve optimum health.
Okay, well, let me just go back to the facility. Yes, we try to do everything as organic as possible. I mean, we even had to find VOC-free organic epoxy coatings that were FDA approved and had to go through some of the approval processes for the epoxy flooring on the floor. The paint on the walls is organic clay paint. I mean, everything from the ground up at our facility is organic and chemical-free. One thing we didn't show you is the liquid processing room. You're going to see that on the screen right there. That's very high-tech, and of course, there's all of the FDA standards in any type of processing room. We have to ensure that those are there, and it's stacks and stacks and stacks of paperwork that we have to fill out to make sure everything is cleaned properly with non-toxic cleaners. You know, most companies, like what you were talking about in China, they use toxic chemical cleaning products. Ours are OMRI listed. Another big factor is what you're going to see is the distillation room. The distillation room, we use triple distilled water. That's a big water distiller right there, and it takes.
Well, again, for radio listeners, basically, you explain that the purpose of the triple distilled water and why you distill it 3 times.
Well, the triple distilled water is an ultra pure energy enhanced water. I mean, the more you distill water, it actually changes its structure at the 3rd, the 6th, and the 9th distillation. So if you look at any of the great chemists from years and years ago, or even the alchemists from the 1600s, they would always ensure using triple distilled water, because even distilled water might have some contaminants, or it might not be as pure as possible. Because
that's right. But I mean, bottom line here, Alex Jones just jumping in because I'm about to come in with a bunch of news in this hour here on this live Friday edition with the great crew, David Knight and of course, Anthony Gucciardi hosting the show in the first 2 hours with Dr. Group out in Arizona. I'm here in South Texas, truly 21st century radio /TV, that beyond the fact that Group's been so careful to have the purest products, it's also what's even more important, the big issue here is that no one has this type of pure crystal-based iodine that we've been showing people on the nightly news. And this is literally the big conspiracy with the globalists to put everything else in that same area of the periodic table, the fluorines, the bromide, all of it, that blocks the iodine. The government, before it was pure evil, at the top said put iodine in the salt, the public needs it in the 20s, took it out in the 60s. This is the big issue. So that's why we're funding our operation while promoting something that everybody needs. It's a win-win-win, like we fund the operation with high-quality water filtration because it's so important. Dr. Strangelove, the famous movie by Stanley Kubrick, they make jokes about precious bodily fluids, but actually Kubrick was telling people through a joke what was really going on in that film. And I've talked to his family on air, folks, but nobody else has been able to. So that's the bottom line. I just wanted to come on, Dr. Group, and thank you for having us up to your great laboratory. I wanted to thank Rob Dew for the great job he's doing, missing his family, flying out there to cover it. And we're going to have more HD footage on the nightly news showing the amazing crystals, the crystal gas, you name it, that is so amazing. And that's why, Richard, will you hand me my X2? In fact, I forgot to take it today. Why X2 is so incredible and what it's personally done for me and my family. When people do purchase the X2, the Super Male Vitality, the Super Female Vitality, any and all of it, at InfoWarsStore.com, InfoWarsLife.com, they are funding the very tip of the spear in the InfoWars. So, Dr. Group, thank you so much for your hospitality and thank you for your groundbreaking work. We'll talk to you again very, very soon.
Thanks, Alex. Appreciate you having me on.
You bet. Amazing job. And again, we've got so much to cover today as we start this new hour. So much has already been covered. I've been listening during almost the entire broadcast, all the different angles that have been covered. I want to get into the naked tyranny that we're facing as a civilization and just how obvious it's all getting here in just a moment. But before I do that and go to all the stories that are up on Infowars.com and PrisonPlanet.com, I wanted to have David Knight and, of course, Anthony Gucciardi put bookends on any other key points that were made in the last 2 hours, top stories that you guys think should be recapped, and then I'm going to plow right into the public takeover of our children by the state. This is incredible on so many fronts. We're going to break down the top story, red link from Infowars.com.
Well, you know, Alex, it seems like Michigan is an area where they really are bringing in the police state total control. We've seen them go in and execute free-range hogs in Michigan. Not hogs. I mean, they're domestically. These are farmers raising a strain of pork.
These are domesticated hogs being killed because the strain is seen by their Bureau of Land Management in the state as one that is basically seen as a feral variant, even though it's the exact same genetics as a regular domesticated European crossbred hybrid hog.
Exactly, and cracking down on many farms there now. Of course, it doesn't really come as any surprise that it's Michigan, again, that is coming after the adolescents, just enacting this Michigan medical records law for all children, 12 to 17. You take them for any medical appointment, and they say there's no way to opt out of this. They're going to take your children away, and they're going to interview them to give them information about sexual items and probably to pry into your family. A lot of times that takes a direction in these discussions where they might come back and misconstrue something that's innocent and come after the parents to try to take their children away. This is something we're seeing in Michigan, and yet at the same time in Tennessee we see a sheriff who's being investigated, actually not investigated. There's a journalist who thinks there's something going on in his prison, asked for a Freedom of Information request, and then he gets investigated by this sheriff, intimidated. So that's what we're really seeing everywhere. People realize this total surveillance state where we have no privacy, where we have everything in our life examined under a microscope, but we can't get any information from this government. And at the same time, the VA authority is having veterans dying on lists waiting to get medical care. We see that 18 of them died in just Phoenix.
And that ties into what we were talking about earlier, people on lists being rejected care. But beyond that, with the private screenings of these 17-year-old girls and below, they go in, and we were talking to Dr. Group earlier, it's no different than a really, really evil used car dealership where they're putting these people on these medications, not just to make a profit, even though the government and the pharmaceutical companies are funding all the studies that say all Americans are mentally ill. But
well, that's the new Freedom Initiative. What we have is a corporate globalist government that's anti-human with no special interest group for the general public, for our basic rights, that are making it the law that we buy their products and their services that are basically slavery. That's what Obamacare is literal predominant foreign banks that own the insurance companies getting a multi-thousand-page, 13,000 pages of rider bill passed that says they can triple, quadruple your prices, cut your care, force you to buy it, raise taxes on poor people, and this is hailed as liberal because the front man of it is supposedly black. Now, I want to shift gears when we come back from the break into the actual story itself, because it's one of those type stories that's a Rosetta Stone into every major angle that we've been talking about that people should become totally outraged about. It's red-linked on Infowars.com. New medical law mandates private conversations with child before they visit doctor. And, of course, this is breaking out of several states, Michigan among them. But as soon as I read this early this morning, when Paul Watson posted it about 7 a.m., I went, wait a minute. This isn't just the limited tip we got out of Michigan and the confirmation. They're posting signs saying we're going to call your kids aside and have a secret conversation with them when you bring them in for their checkup, just training you that the state takes your kids away like the TSA does. This is beyond medical tyranny, beyond state-run medical systems. This is going on all over the country and is a federal mandate. And so I Googled it today, and sure enough, you can go back 6 years at least, doctors calling kids over and asking them about mommy and daddy's guns. And they're teaching psychologists, psychiatrists that guns might as well be illegal, that any parent that owns guns is mentally ill. So this is the tyranny. This is state-run medicine, and it must be rebelled against at every level. Doctors and pediatricians and clinic workers that are against it need to speak out, because this is turning them into government spy social workers when the government has the history of the criminal testing, the criminal actions, 6 to 7 times more likely to be abused in government care as a child than any other group. Look it up. So we're going to break it all down straight ahead on this Friday roundtable, worldwide transmission. I'm coming to you from Texas, the crew's from Texas, reporters from Arizona, so much more. We are Infowars. Infowars.com, because there is a war on for your mind. We'll be right back. Stay with us. If you think I'll sit around, the government says, as the world goes by, you're thinking like a fool, because all it takes is you and I. Out there is a world of slaves to be taken over and told what to do and taught they're little and powerless. And that's what we'll do at the New World Order. Well, if they think that I'm going to sit around while they enslave humanity, they've got another thing coming. Alex Jones here live. Riding shotgun with me, of course, are David Knight, Anthony Gucciardi, another great host of Infowars Nightly News. Now, I remember this started really decades ago, but it was creeping, and they would back off every time it happened. But you would have pediatricians, psychologists, school nurses, you name it, call the SWAT team on dad because he had a gun case. And, you know, the 13-year-old from a rural community would move into the city and tell their new school counselor, I actually remember covering this like 15 years ago, it was a real case, that, no, I'm allowed to get in and get the guns. And so a SWAT team was called. But it was totally legal and lawful for a 13-year-old trained with firearms to get into the firearms case. They'd been trained how to use them. I mean, I grew up like that. But it goes to the mentality of brainwashing the public, as the Attorney General, Eric Holder, said, against guns, to where there is the perception that you own guns, you must be a criminal. Now, that's what's going on. We actually know what pediatricians, what medical doctors, what dentists, what oral surgeons, what orthodontists are being recruited to do, because it's been in the news. And my father, last year, Homeland Security tried to recruit him, and then he asked around, and every dentist he knew had been either visited at their offices or at their homes by DHS, and it was to be political officers. It was, well, what do you mean? I mean, I'd call the police anyways if a patient was saying something criminal that they were planning to do. I have a responsibility to do that. And they'd say, no, 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 there's no more patient-doctor privilege on stuff that isn't even illegal. You have a duty to tell us if they don't like the government or they talk bad about the IRS. And my dad thought they were trying to set him up. And he said, what do you think I ought to do? And I said, no, go ahead and start talking to him and talk to other dentists to find out more. And he found out, no, they didn't even know that David Jones was my dad, this longtime patient of his with the DHS, who was playing spy. They didn't even know that, and they had already gone to Dr. King in his office and others that same week. So he called other dentists he knew, and they said, no, we're getting visits, sometimes by FBI agents at their homes. So you have a total recruitment, like the Stasi would do in East Germany. I mean, this is so authoritarian, it's so over the top. 2 days ago, Holder announced Homeland Security offices in every small town and big city looking for homegrown terrorists, pre-crime. So you see an article at Infowars.com, like new medical law mandates private conversations with child before every doctor visit, parental authority being eviscerated by the state. And this gets into what's happening in Michigan. And Christine Duffy brought her 17-year-old daughter to the physician's office for a minor foot injury. She was told the new medical access law required a nurse to have a private conversation with her child. Another example of parental authorities being eviscerated by the state. Folks, they do this to 5-year-olds. I've had 3 children with a doctor I know in North Austin at a nice hospital. Now, she's a listener and a great lady. Didn't matter. Every time we get called in, the nurse says, will you bring this file downstairs, Mr. Jones? And then when I go downstairs, she says, you know, do you have enough money? Does he beat you? And they're not telling my wife while this is happening, it's being put in a computer database where if she says they don't have enough money, the kids are being taken. Okay? You're not being told you have a right to remain silent. Everything will, be used against you in a court of law. They've gotten rid of Miranda. Supreme Court ruled 8 years ago. And again, the state acts like it's doing all this to take care of us. This is the same government caught doing thousands and thousands of secret tests, killing thousands of people per test in some cases, microwaving, radiating foster kids, giving black people syphilis just a few years ago, turning the oxygen off to babies. Okay, this is the criminal globalist. It's not like they're doing this and being authoritarian for their own good. That's always the excuse. No, it's just like in every other case. It's because they want total power. Now, the good news is the average doctor, the average cop, the average social worker isn't even bad yet. But under centralization, they're bringing in the computerized orders to them where they follow forms where they don't have any discretion. They're like robots, biological robots that come out and enforce all this. We're going to break it down and tie it into third world countries where it's already being done as well, like India, you name it. It's all coming up. This is so key. On the mark. We know throughout history over and over again the patterns that authoritarian states follow. The surveillance, the forced drugging, the propaganda, the worship of the system, the state claiming that it's God and that only its needs should be met. Everyone else can basically starve to death or die for the state. Well, now the state, in their own word, is the bankers. Not your banker down the street that's integral to the economy and helps loan money, which is fine. The banker that's the mega globalist that issues the currency and credit, that can create 1,500 trillion globally in the last 20 years of derivatives and then sign the people of the world onto it. True slavery, my friends, is Nigeria. If you can go look up the phase of loans they got starting in the 60s, getting a $2 billion loan, then a $4 billion loan in the 80s, and paying, last time I checked, more than $40 billion on one $2 billion loan and more than $60 billion on the other loan. I know it was close to $100 billion they've paid on less than $10 billion in loans. $100 billion on less than $10 billion. And they're in greater debt than they ever were. They can never get out of it. And the globalists fully control the nation. That's what we're going under in America. Now, Nigeria never had a history of freedom. Venezuela's never had a history of freedom. But America's not been perfect, but it's been the model of freedom because you did have more freedom here on the economic index in the last 240 years than you've had in any other country. Now, we're dwarfed now by places like Switzerland and Luxembourg, but those are globalist command bases that they leave somewhat free for themselves as a get-out-of-jail-free card. And you can't move there unless you're stinking rich. I can't move to Switzerland, folks. I couldn't move to Switzerland. I couldn't get into Switzerland. So you need to understand something, ladies and gentlemen. This is a rigged game, and I talk about this constantly because if we don't realize it's rigged, and that's the true form of discrimination, and stop fighting over what color we are, it's over. It's over. And David Knight, he's going to talk more about this in about 10 minutes, but I wanted him to show the article first and just mention it. Here's Bloomberg today saying in Venezuela they sacrificed drinking water and medicine to pay bankers. Notice Hugo Chavez is gone, but he paid the bankers. And the bankers always fund communist and socialist fake revolutions. I'll guarantee you they're in control of that guy. And they're in control of his new replacement. And David, show folks that article because this ties into parents having no rights and the state saying your kids belong to us. This is the exact system of where we have no rights. Only the government and the corporations have rights right out of James Caan's rollerball. David Knight.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, Alex. They've got a quote even here from Barclays banker who says, the government's priority is to pay the sovereign debt. Now, he's saying that even as they say in the article, 42 people have died because of food and medicine shortages since February. So this is not something that is just limited to this particular government. They point out that under Hugo Chavez, they said he kept up, this is Bloomberg reporting this, Bloomberg.com. They say Hugo Chavez kept up payments to bondholders, allowing them to reap returns of 692% during his 14-year tenure. Almost 700% profits for these bankers, while his people are suffering economic hardship to the point of not even having water and trying to cross the border to get water and medicine.
Absolutely. We're going to cover that more coming up in a few minutes. But here's the issue. Obamacare is not Obamacare. I love to call it that because he's unpopular. I can tie this monstrosity to him, and hopefully we can beat it. But the globalists have passed the similar laws all over the world. And when you see something like Venezuela and 600+% profits for the banksters, they come in, put a dictatorship in even before he got in power, and then when he continued, and have them give them sweetheart deals where you give us all your roads and water, and we only charge you 200% interest every couple of years, and then we double the prices. That's how so-called privatization works. I'd be for real privatization. The problem is governments are so incredibly corrupt over and over again that they are basically always giving us the biggest screw job because of the complexity of the world. The world's so big, we're destroyed by the bigness, by the complexity that evil and bureaucracy is able to hide behind. But bottom line, you cut government, you cut the taxes, you give the people more money, they can build an economy voting for quality. And you've got two different parallel free market systems running, and what's left of that. And then you've got the socialism and the corporate fascism above it taking credit for all that's good that free market created. Now, think about this. This is not just in Michigan, and it's a great article when I saw Paul Watson do it. But we need to have another article maybe Monday or something, and anybody can go search this. You know, just type in doctors told to talk to children about guns. And you'll have the White House denying it's going at Media Matters, but separately, you'll have Time Magazine coming out, Kids and Guns, Why Doctors Have a Right to Know. A federal judge overturns a Florida law stating doctors can't ask parents about guns in their household, a law that critics said was a sign of gun rights protection gone too far. Since when do you go to a doctor and they're asking about, do mommy and daddy smoke pot? Do mommy and daddy have guns? What do mommy and daddy say? Or do mommy and daddy not like the government? This is what they ask them. They have been turned into secret police. Most doctors I know don't want to be part of this. They should have a right. Since when does Michelle Obama tell kids what they eat? Again, my kids 2 years ago went to private school. We said, oh, we've been homeschooling a while. Let's send them to a Christian private school. Great private school, great people. But they're accredited, so they would send handouts back every month with worksheets with Michelle Obama on them. And they would have this training day about food where Michelle Obama videos were shown about what food they were supposed to eat. And I went and talked to the school, and they said, we're sorry, this is done everywhere you're a private school accredited. They're public schools now, folks. It doesn't matter. This is the total control. And again, it's UNESCO. They set the treaties. They set the rules all across the board to control the society and to control the curriculum. And again, folks, I'm broadcasting from my hotel room here, and there's light blasting through the window, bouncing off literally of a pyramid building across the street. So I'm going to put my sunglasses on. Sorry if I'm not doing it for James Bondian effect like the Secret Service. I'm just putting them on because I can't see if you're watching us on prisonplanet.tv or the free feeds for the daily radio show at Infowars.com/show. So this is an absolute screaming war against the people. And then in all the sitcoms, the dramas, the movies, you name it, if you don't like the state training your kids that secret police talk to them constantly, or you don't like the TSA training you to take your kid away where they're groped and psychologists admit it's pedophile training, if you don't like the checkpoints on the highways, if you don't like the Tea Party being demonized as terrorists, if you don't like it, you're a weirdo, as classical authoritarianism comes in. But I noticed when I Google searched doctors ask kids about parents' guns, that I saw Media Matters, Huffington Post, and all of them up top, and Snopes, run by George Soros, is connected to that, saying there is no program to ask kids about guns. There's no man behind the curtain. There is no drone program. If you have a business, you didn't build it. Raising the debt doesn't raise the debt. You know, 2 + 2 = 5. I mean, literally, it doesn't exist, ladies and gentlemen. None of this is happening. None of this is going on. None of this is unfolding. And then meanwhile, from the other side, targeting their minions, they're saying, oh, yes, ladies and gentlemen, of course we are, doing all of this. Of course, We've got to ask about the guns for the children's safety. It's for your safety. It's no big deal. Please don't be a conspiracy theorist. So again, just within that Google search, you can see the propaganda, because then there's dozens of articles saying, yes, a doctor calls the police because a child said he was allowed to shoot guns. Child was 14. It's totally legal to shoot guns with your parents when you're 14. You can do it when you're 7 years old, 6 years old. I know people personally in Austin, Texas, where the CPS has been involved and tried to take people's children because they own a ranch, and they took the 6-year-old, the 9-year-old, and the 11-year-old out shooting, and the state got involved because the kid went and showed other kids photos of his dad shooting guns, and they said, you're with your dad shooting guns, and the police get involved. Okay? I mean, I've told you nothing against them except they're calling the police on us. It's always the same. Californians think it's cheap to buy 10 acres for $5 million. You could buy 10 acres, around Austin, say out in Dripping Springs 5 years ago for maybe $50,000. Now it might be $1 million, $2 million, $3 million. Because the Californians jacked up the prices so much in their bubble, they came here. And so there's people with 200-acre, 1,000-acre, 500-acre farms and ranches that have been there for hundreds of years. And literally the Californians show up, you shoot your guns. This has happened to my neighbors, by the way, all of my neighbors. Hadn't happened to me yet. And the police come, the state police, Hays County Sheriff's Department, and they say, sorry, we're going to go ahead and give you tickets or arrest you. Just your neighbor was scared. This is America. And there is no law, but the Californians are kings of earth, as I've said, because they're there tattling. And in the police state, they've got to teach the public the only power you have is through the state. The only power you have is by sicking people on someone. So it is a total takeover of society with the state saying your kids belong to us and the state saying we're going to take all of your freedoms. And it makes me absolutely, completely, physically sick to know that it isn't just Michigan, folks. They've been doing this by stealth, just like they've been taking our blood for 41 years, worldwide, putting it in the UN database. I'm not bragging on it, but it is a fact. I broke it in 1997 when a nurse gave me the secret documents involved with the U.S. Army. My exposés of it caused families to sue in Texas and Minnesota. We had the families on. In both cases, they were listeners. I remember seeing it in the news starting in about 2002 when the lawsuit started. We would call and get the families on. They say, oh, I heard it on your show. Went and had a baby. They lied to me about it, blah, blah, blah. And then in another suit, the woman later went, a decade later, had heard about it, but after she'd had kids, heard about it on my show, went and tried to have DNA treatment on one of her kids. And they said, sorry, it's going to be $100,000 per treatment because we patented your specific DNA protein. Well, how'd you get my daughter's blood? That was in San Francisco, but they moved to Minnesota later. And they said, well, just, we took the blood at birth. Black ops rule you and your family. We'll shoot black people up with syphilis all day and watch them spread it for 45 years and die with microscopic brainworms eating them. And we will take small children, black, white, old, young, it doesn't matter. We'll radiate you to death and you will worship us and you will love us because if you don't, you're anti-government scum and we'll call you racist. And we'll take black kids and give them pesticides till they die. It'll come out in the New York Daily News and no one will get in trouble. Ha 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 ha. You are 6 to 7 times more likely to be abused in CPS custody than any other custody out there. Look it up, Justice Department's own numbers. There's been articles written, The Shame of Foster Care. They'll put the average foster child on 7 psychotropic drugs. And when they start having convulsions, put you on anti-convulsion drugs until you die. I've had the medical doctors on breaking it down. They will never stop until we stop them. And again, the reason they're able to sell this and get away with all this is that more and more people see the bureaucrat at the low level that has a nice story, and the bureaucrat's got a job, got a degree, got bills to pay off with 2 college degrees or whatever. The social workers, and they've seen a lot of bad stuff. Society is falling apart. They've got a lot of excuses for why they're doing what they're doing. A lot of times they'll buck the system and actually won't hurt you. But more and more, they have to follow computer directives just like doctors, just like lawyers, where it's all computerized, what you follow. the diagnosis, the treatment, what you do, or what you bureaucratically do, where you're just literally a biological android that shows up and has no free will to discern what the best justice is. Now, again, they've given the bureaucrats stuff that's outside the Bill of Rights and Constitution that's classical tyranny. So that's why we have the checks and balances, because it always gets twisted. It always gets abused. There's always a good excuse for it. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. But then once they actually get the power, ladies and gentlemen, it's hell on earth. And you're now seeing that. And the bureaucracy's growing. It's not going to stop. And there's never going to be enough money to pay off the 1.5 quadrillion. It's not even our debt. Iceland said no, arrested the bankers, and found out 93% of the debt was not the 400,000 people of Iceland's debt. It was their criminal government with the British government had signed them on to derivatives. So they just arrested the government leaders who were involved. And they're in jail now. England, the British government, you look it up in the BBC, tried to declare everyone in Iceland a terrorist 4 years ago, and they wouldn't go along with it, and wasn't going to let them fly out of the country because the main airline is British Airways out of Iceland. And they're dependent on the UK. The people said, fine, list us as terrorists. They found their humanity, their will. The globalist had to back off. Look it up. Icelanders listed as terrorists. All of them, 5-year-old children, 80-year-old men, they don't care. They're going to list us all as terrorists and take everything. The level of tyranny we'll live under is the level that we accept. Now, David Knight's going to tie this into Venezuela and the literal, you will not have drinking water now to pay the bankers the debt that you never signed on to and that dictator Chavez signed on to. That isn't even feasible to ever pay back. Loan sharking used to be illegal, folks. They just legalized payday loans in Arkansas, a place that used to have the strongest laws against loan sharking. We are becoming a hell pit, a predatory hell pit by every yardstick. Now, before I go to break, I want to remind you, ladies and gentlemen, that we are listener-supported with the great products we sell at InfoWarsStore.com and InfoWarsLife.com. Now, I personally tend to just take it straight, but a lot of people I know take the Survival Shield Nascent Iodine X2 that just came out. A lot of people take it in water, and that's what I do. And it turns red, ladies and gentlemen. It's red and then turns blue on paper. Everything else turns black. Our older, weaker form that's still excellent and available turns light blue. This turns dark blue on paper. I can take this water out and dump it on paper and turn blue, because it's electric crystals. This stuff is amazing. It's very simple, the solution, isn't it? The iodine conspiracy, folks. They put everything in the water and the food, the bromine, the bromide, the chlorine, everything in that same halogen table that's bad instead of the good halogen you need. Unbelievable. Consult your physician before you do this, because a lot of you are so toxic like I was. Within 15 days to a month, you'll go through a detox and feel like you got a hangover for a week. But let me tell you, on the other side of that, for me, has been something akin to Valhalla. And like every blessing and everything good from God, it helps fund the operation. It's incredible. It helps our listeners. It's win-win-win. Multi-sided victories. That's what I'm into. That's what I believe in. Not predatory. The pie's only this size. Screw everybody else. So InfoWarsLife.com. Thank you all for your support. We're going to come back straight ahead with David Knight and Anthony Gucciardi. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, I'll be back this Sunday, 4 to 6 p.m. Central, and I'm going to have David Knight ride shotgun with me again. So that's coming up this Sunday. Then I'll be back by my lonesome all next week, ladies and gentlemen. But all work and no play makes Jack a dull boy, and also my kids grow up and I don't even know who they are sometimes if I don't take this time off. So I appreciate all of you and your support as well. But let me tell you, I think David and people like Gucciardi do a better job than I do many days. You know, I get really angry, folks, that there's this predatory takeover. The LAPD's announced, yeah, we're going to use drones in law enforcement for manhunts and attract the public. Yeah, we're weaponizing drones. Yeah, you know what? We have been putting stuff in the water to control you. I mean, and then I see the sheep-like public that is just such victims and have no idea what they're going under. I look at the wall Martians at the grocery store and what they're eating and what they're doing, and then I read all the globalist documents where it's planned. And imagine you come in and the state says, the doctor now isn't with the state, but they're a slave of the state. It's indentured servitude. That's totally illegal under our Constitution. And they're going to have a private conversation with your child now. And we know what's in that. Well, what guns do your parents have? Do they beat you? Do you need help? Do you need an abortion? You know, you have a right to an abortion. In California, they say they can give your kids inoculations without parental consent because if the child wants it, they can even pay them to do it. We'll give you $200, take the shot, 9-year-old. Well, it's the same reason that a 15-year-old can't have sex with an 18-year-old. You don't have consent. You aren't at the age of consent. Next, they're going to have loans to 10-year-olds. I mean, this is pure criminal classic evil. And we've got to get in the face of the imperious government and let them know they're not our boss. But that's an incredible article out of Bloomberg, David, where you don't get water, you don't get medicine. And, you know, we got to pay the bankers their 600+% profit on debts that are total scams. If you study how the IMF and World Bank works, closing comments on that and just how big this is. Hey, a journalist wants a FOIA request, we're going to arrest you or call Homeland Security for doing what's legal and lawful. But, oh, your kids belong to us. I mean, this is literally the system trying to break our will. I hope there's a big backlash against this. David, Anthony Gucciardi, closing comments.
Well, you know, Alex, it's always about corporate profits and government control. That's what this kind of economic fascism is about. That's what we're talking about with Obamacare. They always sell it with personal stories of tragedy. They always position themselves as if they care so much about everybody, just as Hugo Chavez and the socialist said that they're going to help the people against the giant corporations. Yet we learned that for 14 years, this is from Bloomberg, they were making nearly 700% profits. The bankers were out of Hugo Chavez, and now, as they're having economic hardship under the new president, they are depriving the citizens there of water and even medicine. They have to go across the border. They've had 42 people die since February because of these shortages. That's the way they always put it. And we see that coming up from Hillary Clinton. There was a story yesterday where she was out there talking about the 0.01%, not even the 1%, you know, the 99 versus 1%. She's putting herself out there as a populist, that she's concerned for people. And yet, at the same time, she and Bill and their daughter are at Goldman Sachs headquarters, and they're collecting $500 million, $500 million from Goldman Sachs alone for the.
And that's right. And they make their money off of cattle deals and insider deals where they go, oh, you won the cattle futures. Like, oh, you went to the lottery and you just won every time, yeah. Hillary. No, they're giving it to her as a payoff. That was proven with McDougal and others. And again, it's a rigged economy where these pigs control everything. Anthony Gucciardi, anything else you'd like to add?
Overall, like we talked before, the turning point, the transformation only comes when these evil people show themselves in the light, and they're so out in the open about everything that overall we are actually coming out and taking them down.
That's right. And another way to defeat them is, well, there's still some remnant of a free market left. People got to vote with their dollars and only support liberty systems, not the globalists. Retransmission coming up now, back Sunday, 4 to 6 p.m., folks. Nightly News tonight, 7. Great job to the crew, our affiliates. Support our local affiliates and their sponsors.